I've saved my progress as tikicircle.ai. In this exercise, we're going to set about editing the central tiki mask, and then in a later exercise, we'll update all the other instances to match. Now, let's say what I want to do with this guy is I want to make him a little more evil. Currently, he's got this sort of slack-jawed look, and he's kind of has zombie eyes. He's not the least bit scary, in my opinion, and I think it'd be more interesting if he was scary. So I'm going to give him kind of an evil grin, ultimately. And one way to modify the symbol would be to double-click on this instance in order to enter the symbol isolation mode. And I can see the tiki in the context of the other tikis, which is great. However, the big problem is that all of my local adjustments, the fact that he's scaled to 200%, the fact that he was moved to a different location inside the illustration, and of course his drop shadow, they're all lost to me. I can't see him. And I don't want to work that way. I want to see him in full context. So I'm going to press the escape key in order to leave that mode. And I'm going to click on the instance again to select it. And I'm going to break the link to this instance. And what that does is it gives me back my original path outlines so I can modify those paths. So I'll go over here to the symbols panel, bring it up on screen. And then down here, notice at the bottom of the symbols panel, there's this little broken chain icon. That breaks the link between the symbol here inside the symbols panel and the instance inside the illustration window. So go ahead and click on it, and all of a sudden you'll see all of your anchor points. So you can always regain access to that original artwork anytime you like. All right, now I'm going to hide the symbols panel, and I'm going to zoom in on this guy a little bit. Now what I want to do is apply a distortion to this tiki mask, and I'm going to do that using the envelope distortion feature. This is a feature that I devote a lot of attention to in a later chapter inside the mastery portion of the series. So this will just give you a preview of upcoming events. I'll go up to the object menu, choose envelope distort, and choose this command right there, make with mesh, or you can press Control-Alt-M, Command-Option-M on the Mac. And what that does is it draws a kind of matrix around the object, and then you can modify the points inside of that matrix/mesh in order to distort the contents of the envelope. So I'll go ahead and choose the command. And then Illustrator asks you how many rows and columns you want to devote to your mesh. In order to see what's going on, turn on the preview checkbox. And notice the second you do, things shift on screen. Notice his eyes got a little narrower. I'll show you the before version. This is what he really looks like. He's got big roundish eyes. And as soon as I turn on preview, they get kind of narrower. The shape of his mouth changes as well. And this thing under his eye, this crease, pretty much goes away. We kind of lose it, which is a problem. And it's something that we'll fix in just a moment. But for now, I want these rectangles that are created by the intersections of the rows and columns, I want them to be a little more square. Currently, they're tall and narrow, just as the tiki mask is tall and narrow. So I'm going to add more rows by clicking inside the rows value and pressing the up arrow key, and I'll see more rows added on the fly because I've got the preview checkbox turned on. Then I'll tab down to columns and press the down arrow key to get rid of one of the columns. And now we have something closer to squares where the rows and columns intersect. Not quite, but we're getting there. Anyway, this is good enough because I've got a line, a row that goes right above the eyes. And then I have one row line above the mouth and another below. And that'll give us all the control we need. Now I'll click OK in order to accept that mesh. And now we can edit the points on the mesh just as if they're anchor points. We've got control handles as well, even though we're not yet seeing them. And you can modify those points and control handles using the white arrow tool. But before I switch to that tool, I want to modify the fidelity of this envelope distortion. And I can do that by going up to this little icon in the control panel that looks like a little dialog box. And you click on it to bring up the envelope options. And then you've got this fidelity slider right there. And to see what kind of difference it makes, turn on the preview checkbox and then crank it up to 100. And notice we get a much better rendering of our original tiki mask. And that's going to serve us well. The reason it's set low by default is for performance reasons. But this guy isn't all that complicated, so we should be able to work with a very high fidelity value. I'll click OK in order to accept my change. And then I'm going to switch to the white arrow tool. And I'm going to click on the points along both sides of the mouth. So I'll click on this point first and then shift click on the point below. And then I'll shift click on each of the analogous points over there on the left-hand side. And I'm going to drag those points up while pressing the shift key. And that should result in a strictly vertical movement, but it's going off to the side for some reason. And that must be because I forgot to reset my constraint axes. So I'll press Control-Z, Command-Z on the Mac to undo that modification. I'll press Control-K, Command-K on the Mac to bring up preferences. Sure enough, the constraint angle is still set to 30 degrees. I'm going to tab down to the value, set it to 0 degrees. So I'll click OK. That goes ahead and solves our problem. So if I press the Shift key and drag up the sides of the mouth, we end up getting this absolutely goofy grin. He doesn't look evil at all. He looks like he's chuckling and he's semi-lost his mind. So we'll need to do some additional work in order to get him nice and evil, and we'll do that work in the next exercise.